Recording service. Recording. All right, we're in motion. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the OSEHRA VA PALS Working Group meeting. It is Wednesday, the 2nd of May, 2018, and my goodness, how time flies when you're having fun. And boy, are we having fun. We are going to be talking today about the patient lookup, its current status, both of the this side of the patient lookup, which Alexis is working on, and then the back side, the web service side, which George is working on. We're also going to talk about the design and whether we want to have just one patient lookup box instead of two boxes the way we do now. And at the end of that discussion, if we still have time, we will continue on and have ourselves a tidy little discussion of going through the biopsy form in detail. But for now, why don't we get started where we are. Alexis, are you comfortable taking the reins and showing us your stuff? Why don't I make you? How do I do that? How do I make you share? Oh, I pass keyboard and mouse. Oh, I make you a presenter. Shall I do that?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Change presenter. Passing privileges to Alexis.
Okay. Can you all see my browser here with the console open?
I don't yet.
See if I need to accept something.
Yeah, you'll have to go up under share and say what you want to share. There it is.
Beautiful. Okay.
It is indeed beautiful.
So let's see. I haven't done anything since 3 p.m. yesterday Pacific time, so if anyone has looked at this, there's nothing new to see, but if you haven't, here is the patient lookup field, and I can, for example, put in CA, and I get all of these patients. At present, George's web service is, to the best of my knowledge, he may not have a version running on Postfire or Vendev. But to my knowledge right now, we're only getting back the full name and the last 5. So those are the two, or sorry, we're also getting the DFN, the patient number, their unique record number, but I'm not displaying that here. And when you select one of these, oh, and so this will change. It is dynamic. So if I get far enough, we're down to 3 results. And at the moment, if I select one of these records, nothing visible happens. But in fact, that patient's data is being saved via jQuery in association with that input element. And then, as I mentioned in Skype yesterday, I've got some bugs to work out here. And like I mentioned on I think the call yesterday, I really sort of am copying this code over from a previous project, but the behavior of that window was actually a lot more elaborate. And so I have apparently snipped out a little too much of the wrong or right code, depending on how you want to look at that.
It happens.
But I'll get this working today and get the button, well, once we agree on what the button is supposed to do. So I think right now, yeah, I changed the text to say select, since I wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen next. I know we discussed that behavior yesterday, like going to the intake form for a new patient versus going to maybe like the case review for an established patient. But anyway, that's what I've got to show. If anybody has any questions, I'll gladly answer them, but I think that's pretty straightforward.
This is Rick Avila. Just joined. Can you just show that again so you can see it? Drew, are you there?
Looks like Drew's connected. I don't know if his audio's going yet.
All right.
Yes, I can't find the unmute button.
Hi, Drew.
Rick, thank you. I'd like to see it again.
Yeah, please,
okay.
Please do it one more time. So, wait. Okay. So before you do, Drew, I mentioned this to you before, but we've been talking about taking these two text areas where you can put in a search for a name, a patient, and basically combining it into one. And then when we do that, we're going to take the results and and present them in a way that VA people have commonly used before. So please take it from there.
Sure. So right now, George is expanding the set of search patterns that are available to the user. So one of the common ones is what we call last five. So that's the first letter of the last name and the last four of the Social Security number. Others are just a full name search. Like here, AB, we get Abbott, for example. And I think we are now supporting to first of last and first of first. For example, there, Abelardo Cartwright.
Multi-partial lookup, yeah.
Okay, multi-partial lookup, yep. And then we have the ability to select one of these patients. And I didn't waste any time until we had a very clear path here with what happens next. So when you select one of these patients, nothing visible happens, but I can look at the input through jQuery and see that that patient's info has been saved there for whatever the subsequent query or post action is.
So it's totally ready to go now. We've got the data.
So Alexis, why don't you demo the last five, querying on the last five?
Oh, is that working now?
Yeah, that works. And you can put multiple letters for the first name and last name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all that works.
Oh, yes, for the multi-partial. Yes, right. Okay. C4. Okay, so it didn't like C4. Let me.
No, it wants.
You have to give it four numbers. You have to. It's not progressive. You have to give it C. You know, a letter and then four numbers.
I'm going to have to change the behavior to make this work.
Select C4149.
Yeah, I'll see if I can type it fast enough. There we go. But clearly I need to fix that behavior for people typing more slowly and doing a last five. But there we go as a demonstration that it works.
So Drew, is that the way you typically look up a patient?
I just put, I do last five, or I'll type out the whole name without any, like, I don't jump to the first name without typing out the whole last name first.
Okay. But different people have different ways they like to do it, right?
Yeah, we're just trying to make sure that it matches CPRS and the range of things that are supported. Okay. So Drew, do you have questions, comments, or concerns about what you're seeing so far?
No, this is good.
Excellent.
All right, bye.
Okay then. So that's Alexis's part. If we want to send the talking stick over to George, he can show us the web services.
I think you have to make me presenter.
Yeah, let's see. Change. No, that's not it. Yeah.
Never mind, I got it.
Oh, good. Because I'm a newbie at driving this thing.
So you just actually, this is redundant because you just saw saw those web services work in Alexis's demo, but this is we support a single letter. This is all the letters beginning with G, G, comma, that kind of thing.
So showing the JSON here, right?
Yeah, that's right. What you're seeing. Oh, that's So we got some GRs. We do GRs. So and what we're returning is right now we're returning the DFN, the last five, and the name. I think we probably should also return date of birth and gender.
Yeah.
And then we'll have I think the same demographics in the search box as CPRS shows. I think those are the and if we were supporting multiple sites, we would have what site they're in. we're going to extend this if we decide to support the single search box. What we would do is enhance this output so that there'll be another variable in the JSON which will say VA PALS equals 0 or VA PALS equal 1, and that'll indicate which patients are already enrolled in VA PALS, and then the idea was to reflect that for Alexis to reflect that in the results. So you'd be able to see. So if you're looking for a patient that is already enrolled, you do a search either by the by any of the means we have, and it would come back marked as in enrolled, and you'd click on that, and then you would be taken to the case review page for that patient. And if if you did a search and then you were looking for a patient that was not yet enrolled because you're going to enroll them, then you would pick a patient that's not marked as enrolled, and you would be taken selecting that would enroll the patient, and you would be taken to the intake form. And Alexis, for you, the call is exactly the same. In either way, whatever they select, you'll send it to the same place, and then I'll redirect it to the proper the next form.
Gotcha.
It's exactly the same call that's on the that's in the new case form on the service now. So I'll show you that. Well, it doesn't work the way it will, but we can show you how it works now. So this is the one without, this is the page without your enhanced new case form. So what happens here is you just send it. It goes to VA PALS, and we've registered this patient, and we've initialized both the intake and background form, and there's the intake form with the names initialized, the study ID, and that information, that function will be here, and we're hopefully going to be able to pre-fill some of these other fields as well. So that's what we match, and then of course then you could pick a new form and add to them. So CT evaluation, for example.
Right.
Right. So so that's what I had to show. I think for the web server, it's pretty clear. We could support either having we could support either having 2 search boxes or having 1 search box. And I think if we have 1 search box, I can also support the current searching by ID, because I'll be able to tell if you just enter in a number or if you enter in a full study ID.
So
we can do that as well.
I'll address this to you, George, but really it's a question for everyone in terms of the design and experience. So if we're going to combine the, did you want to interrupt?
No, it wasn't me.
Oh, no, not you. I thought anyway. So if we're going to support, if we're going to combine these 2 lookup inputs, perhaps we can sort of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and instead of having a Boolean attribute for whether or not they're, or we could have both, the Boolean attribute and I guess we need to also maybe list their study ID, right? If they're a person who's already in, so when they select that patient, we see name, date of birth, gender, last 5, study ID, and maybe a semi-redundant Boolean for if they're already enrolled in the study?
Yes, showing the study ID would be a way to indicate that they're enrolled.
Yeah.
Or we could indicate it with a different symbol or something. I mean, either one would be fine.
Or I guess my point is, if they are, I think we want to show the study ID whether or not we also show the Boolean. Right?
Why do we need to show a study ID at all? I guess I don't understand.
Well, so far the study ID has been part of the architecture, but if we want to remove that because it's not relevant to the VA, that certainly changes this discussion.
Yeah, so Drew, this project has been framed as an implementation project and specifically not a research project.
Well, first of all, I think we can have the word study from a regulatory standpoint, and then next we just need what our eyes are familiar with, which is whenever we're in the CPRS space, remember what's in the top left of that GUI? The patient's name and the social security number. So if that can be visible on all screens at all times, that way if a user has to toggle to CPRS, I assume that the instance of CPRS will always be on when this is on, when they toggle. Is that correct?
It makes sense, yeah.
Well, we're not. I think we're not developing any software that would open both of them at the same time. But I would assume that they certainly both can be on.
Yeah, I guess our long-term goal is that it would be synchronized with CPRS, that as far as like matching patient ID as Vista Web does.
Right, I see.
Right. But if it isn't and the user has to toggle over, the first thing they have to do is make sure they're not looking at the wrong patient's charts.
Right.
Two different charts. So name and last 4 in case they have to do a search again would be great. But I don't know where it is on the timetable, but at some point that's an important development to have, which is when this is open, CPRS, that instance for that patient is also open. And therefore, when you change the patient on this screen, the CPRS would also change in real time.
I don't know. Any thoughts on how hard that is?
Well, that's called CCOW, and it's a very expensive product that the VA has implemented, and we don't have access to it at this point. So we're going to need to have some collaboration with the VA people to get CCOW to work with this.
Yeah, I mean, we could dress it up as a patient safety issue, right? If you're putting the wrong information here from the wrong patient over there.
It's complex. Getting CCOW to work between 2 windows is complex. They do it for imaging, and they do it for, as you said, for Vista Web. It's not impossible to do, but we can't develop it outside the VA without their CCOW implementation stuff.
Is that the letter C and then cow?
Yes.
Yes.
CCOW.
And okay, but coming back to Drew, I want to just come back to what we were talking about earlier. Study ID. Do you feel we need to have a study ID associated with each person entered into VA PALS or not?
That might be. It depends if it's needed for later de-identified evaluations, but I see it as a distraction on this screen. I also see it as a regulatory problem at a time of an audit. Why?
What if it was something we assigned but we didn't show?
Yes.
Well, for example, here on the case review page, in fact, here we use the word case ID.
Yeah, I don't think it belongs here, but on the back end it would be fine if it has some other utility when it comes to analyzing.
And we have on the forums we show it. Well, you know, it's here for LCAP compatibility.
Yeah.
so that in fact you can actually analyze cases, the VA cases and LCAP cases in the same using the same software because they're identical. They are identified the same way, and they contain exactly the same. They use the same data dictionary. They contain the same data elements.
George?
Yeah.
That's not going to hold very long. That's about to split we're going to make so many changes to the software that there'll be differences between them.
Okay, from an epidemiologist standpoint, when one does look at these later, we always have to generate unique IDs for any patient anyway before we anonymize some of the information. So if that's prospectively assigned, it just makes one less step in the future. But again, I would have it off of the GUI.
Keep it just on the back end?
Yes.
Okay, that's easy to do. I mean, we do need it. The database does need an identifier. So whether you see it or you don't see it, we're going to have a unique identifier for each one of these.
I think there's going to be agreement amongst VA users to have the Social Security number there instead.
Okay.
And then if anonymization is needed later, they can deal with it. There's processes for that when it comes to analysis time.
Okay.
This is Alexis again, and I swear not to nitpick, but just in the interest of total clarity, how do you feel about having the patient name and last 5 showing at all times, the case ID or whatever we want to call it not showing, except in the URL? Because right now the way the REST interface works,
this is the only URL they'll ever see, Alexis.
Oh, now that we
changed that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no other URLs. There's only one URL. This is the only one.
Got it. I take it back.
Okay.
Good question.
So, and Drew, in the upper left-hand corner in CPRS, you're saying it's the name, and then is it the full SSN or just the last 5?
I think it's the full.
Okay, so we could do that. We've got that information.
Yeah, the last 5 thing is just what we use when we're querying, but then when it displays, it's got name, and it even has a phone number right there too. Sometimes I can't remember where the screenshot is. Let me dig it up.
Isn't there a project in the VA right now to remove SSNs from everything and replace it with another identifier?
I have no idea how long that will take them to do, but if they do it correctly, they'll do it using that switchover mechanism, the patient long ID and short ID through that file that Cameron set up a couple decades ago that IHS modulates through as well. So we could certainly modulate through that as well once they get to the point where it's working.
This is Drew. I noticed printouts that only the last 4 are showing up now. There are a bunch of X's, so that might be part of that implementation.
Ah.
So if we show the last 5, we'll be ahead of the curve.
Well, I'm just going to say, just make sure, I'm sure there are APIs to map the Social Security number for the applications that use it, and make sure to use that. And I think PID of VA DPT might be doing it, so that would be good to use.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. So that's good. That'll bring us more closely into alignment with CPRS. And of course, removing extra study ID fields off of some of these forms reduces the number of fields, which we know is a goal for usability. So that's good too. Okay. So let's go back and look at the home page again. So then
we won't need this pull
right.
at all. That's gone.
Right.
I think we should just say probably a patient lookup in one thing with one field, and I don't think you even need the submit button the way your code is working now.
Right. The reason we've got 2 submit buttons is because we've got 2 different fields, and they're trying to make it absolutely clear which one.
I don't know if you even need one submit button. Because
well, that's the thing, is if you reduce it to 1 field, then you don't need 2 buttons or even 1 button, because now if you hit return, the thing you're hitting return on is this one thing.
Well,
presumably.
don't you want people to have the opportunity to accidentally select a patient, realize it before they leave this screen, select a different patient, and then hit a button or the enter key to say, no, now I'm really ready.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
You're right. Because you've got that more sophisticated interaction that happens before they've actually settled on somebody.
So just so you know, those fields right now, you can either hit the submit button or return, and that's on the LCAP's demo system that they are letting us use.
Okay.
Yeah, returns and submit are usually interchangeable.
Yes, Kathy?
Oh, I was just going to say, are you trying to imply that users aren't perfect?
Well, I know I'm not. I just demonstrated a minute ago with URL.
So, on that note, a couple of things then. So, many database management systems separate adding from selecting an existing. One of the things that's unusual about Vista and dates back to Ted O'Neill's study in the 1960s is the use of Lego lookups, which is what we're proposing to do here, where addition and selection are combined into one prompt. When they made that decision, the studies that they did in the 60s showed that if you combine them into one prompt, which they recommend, that after they enter it, if this would be adding a new entry, you don't just do it, because the error rate's pretty high. If it looks like they're not picking a VA PALS member, an existing case, if it looks like they're picking someone from Vista who hasn't been in VA PALS before, the Ted O'Neill recommendations from the 60s and the basic kind of pattern that VA follows would be that we'd have some kind of a pop-up or something that says, are you saying that you want to add this person as a new VA PALS? Some way indicate that they aren't yet a VA PALS case, and do they confirm, get them to say yes, they want to do it. It doesn't come up in CPRS because CPRS is working off the core patient file. It's not actually creating a secondary cohort, but this is definitely creating a secondary cohort. And so if we combine them, we'll want to have some kind of something like that, a confirmation, so that they don't accidentally click the wrong thing, and next thing you know, we've just created somebody in VA PALS that we then have to back out.
That's a good idea, Rick. Alexis, can you do that?
Sure.
Cool.
And then there's a thing that I was thinking about, but I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea, and so you should treat it as, you know, with skepticism. And that is, I suppose it would be possible to stick a radio button next to this where they could say, do they want to filter to just see existing VA PALS cohort members, or do they want the whole group to pick from? Like they know, you know, the nurse navigator almost certainly 90% certainty knows whether they're picking somebody who's already a member of VA PALS or someone who's not. And then that could seriously streamline the list that's brought up in front of them. You know, if they know they're picking an existing one, why should they be filtering through an enormous body of a million patients?
So instead of a radio button, I think a checkbox.
Oh, sure, yeah.
It would say VA PALS only, and if they checked it, the result list would be filtered only by the people who are already enrolled.
That makes sense.
We might want to ask what the default is, because we might want the default to be only search VA PALS, and the checkbox would be no search all of Vista.
Good.
So I feel like that would make sense once there are a bunch of people already enrolled, but that could be obnoxious as a default early on in the program. Because if you've got 2 people enrolled at your site and they're trying to enroll the 3rd one, and the default is to only search the list of people who are already enrolled. Anyway, it's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I have no idea which way it should go.
In any case, if you should make it, there should not be default behavior that you don't plainly see on the screen.
Yes.
So if so, I think VA PALS only would be the checkbox, and the question about a default is by default that checkbox checked, or is by default that checkbox unchecked?
Yeah, we can try it both ways and see what we like.
Well, it would be, you know, since this is the only way to get to patients patient screens. You know, you get to get any patient forms through the search mechanism. I would imagine that that the nurse navigator will be looking up patients that are already enrolled more frequently. They're going to be looking up patients that are not yet enrolled.
That makes sense.
I would think that's my theory. That most often, I mean, statistically, most often the search box is going to be used to locate a patient that's already enrolled.
Managing the existing cases.
Right, managing the existing cases, adding a new form, going to, you know, contacting the patient, going to the intake form or to the follow-up form, and that, you know, and that's probably by a fairly large factor. The new cases will be much smaller percentage of how it's used.
What happened to our ideas of having two lists combined?
Well, that's what we just are talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
But I misunderstood. I thought you were saying that you'd have to check a box to get.
No. If you don't check the VA PALS only checkbox, if you don't check it, then you'll get a list that is combined from both, you know, the VISTA system and the VA PALS system.
I got it.
And then it would be, and the patients that are in the VA PALS system would be marked, and you'd know which ones are. But if you wanted to see the list where you see only the results from VA PALS, then you check the checkbox, and you only get those.
Okay. Behavior is a fine list. Got it.
Right.
So yeah, so that's a thing, and then so this page will change significantly. Then we'll lose the box on the right. We're going to change the words case review to, you know, like select patient or patient lookup. We'll remove the locate by. And for those who aren't sure why we're doing that, it's because in the original code from Mount Sinai, the JavaScript was deciding what kind of a selection to do back on the server, on the database, whereas in our code, the server-side lookup is very smart and flexible. It's as anyone who's used CPRS is familiar with. So we don't have to specify which way we're doing the lookup. It's unambiguous, and the server can figure it out and present the matches accordingly. So then we're really streamlining this lookup. It's becoming a much cleaner, and it buys us back more real estate, which is good, because although right now there isn't much else on the page, obviously there's going to be a bunch of reports that we'll want to link to off of here eventually, and there will be more statistics as that develops. So it's good to have a lot of extra room for all that stuff. Are there questions, comments, or concerns about the patient lookup and what we're proposing to do?
Hey, just wanted to volunteer that I'll take care of modifying this template to reflect this change we're just talking about.
Great, thank you, Tom.
Well, this is Drew. I'm sorry. I see Artit is on the call now, and maybe he could address that study ID number issue, although we probably still want to discuss it further with Dr. Henschke at some point. Artit, are you able to unmute? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I don't know if you were on the call earlier. Their question is that the belief is that it might be value to hiding the study ID from the GUI, but preserving it in the background so that each case does have a unique ID number. Do you have any comments or thoughts about that?
I guess I would just echo what was said earlier. I mean, I don't know if there's a need for it other than for doing research. So, I guess I agree with the what I said earlier, that I don't think it needs to be visible. We have it because that's sort of we just use the identifier to look up patients. But since we don't have any issues with needing to hide the patient information from the users, I don't think that's an issue.
Okay. Yeah, I like the idea of keeping it at least on the back end, because when I think about the last 17 years of work you guys have done, where you've been able to take the data that has been collected and use it to refine and optimize your protocols for treatment, it would have to be one of the goals of this VA initiative, you know, not just to immediately implement the existing protocols, which are going to be, you know, a huge benefit to veterans' health and longevity, but also then to be able to use the data that's collected to, you know, possibly make other discoveries that might help refine it further and increase the survival rates. So anything that you guys need us to do on the back end that we can keep, like the study ID, that could help you, we're more than happy to do. Especially if it doesn't show up on the page, then the users, they're not going to care.
One thing, I may be misremembering, but my understanding is that the veterans, or rather VA has an opt-in program for medical studies, to use veterans data for medical studies. I could be wrong.
Do you know, Drew? Do you remember whether it's opt-in or opt-out for veterans?
Opt-out requires very high-level approval in central office. It's usually waiver-based research. So our goal, and VA has a long history of this, we would just analyze this as part of a quality assurance project. But we're going to be leaning on folks like Artit and Rowena at Mount Sinai to be doing some of the analysis. So the more this looks like theirs, the better, and therefore the back end really needs input from their team.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good clarification. Other questions, comments, or concerns about the
on that issue? I think that if we take the same philosophy that LCAP has taken about as we make changes to as we identify new data, for example, that we might gather on in this application that wasn't gathered in the classic LCAP system, if we add new variable names to the records, they would not. That'd be the methodology we'd use. We would, if there is a need to add a new field, we'd use a new name and namespace it and document that. But that if we have information that is the same as on the LCAP form, then we would use the same name the LCAP system does. So
right.
So that insofar as all these existing fields of data that we're gathering, all of those fields of data will be named exactly the same name and have the same meaning as the LCAP system, and the structure of it will be will allow us to do data exchange essentially using the JSON format that Artit came up with. So we already have an exchange format, or a format where you could take forms from multiple systems and combine them seamlessly, combine them so they'd understand them. So we have a method of aggregating results from many sites and keeping them all straight, and having a unique ID for every single participant, and having all the names of the data fields be consistent with the LCAP stuff. So that I think we can continue with that. We've done that up till now, and I think we can continue to do that.
Absolutely. So another way to say that is we're going to maintain backward compatibility with the
right.
name of variables in LCAP, and to the greatest extent possible, we will maintain compatibility with LCAP. But there's a bunch of things now we need to do to integrate better with VA, and we're going to diverge there, unfortunately. That's all I was trying to say.
Exactly. So we're in total agreement.
Yeah.
I think we can do everything we're talking about doing without breaking the backward compatibility with LCAP. From a data level, not from a screen level or anything.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Other questions, comments, or concerns about the proposed changes to the lookup? Well then, hearing none, we're down to the last 16 minutes of the call, but I think that should be enough time to walk through the biopsy form like we did before. So let me share my screen. And is this visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And for those of you who were on our call the other day, there was a bug in creating new follow-up forms and pet evaluation forms. That bug is gone. I fixed it, so all the forms work.
Beautiful. So let's see, who should we look at? 001 maybe? Look, he has forms. So maybe we try creating a biopsy form?
Yep.
And let's do that here. Create new form. Voila! We have a form. Okay, so let's try some things. So if we say, yeah, let's say a biopsy was performed, and maybe the procedure date was today. And where was the biopsy performed? Is this on the body? No, this must be a hospital location, a ward maybe, or a clinic. So maybe Dr. Drew's clinic. And indication for biopsy, maybe it was the size, and we've had a number of CT evals on this patient, so maybe we could say maybe it was the size of the growth. And our lesion site could be left upper lobe. And our type of specimen could be.
Somebody has a great heartbeat.
That's I think Linda's fan. So cytology and a needle biopsy and what do we want to do here? Chest tube? Let's do a chest tube. And say no complications this time. It all went great, because after all, it's Dr. Drew's clinic. It always goes great in Dr. Drew's clinic. And biopsy pathology details could be, maybe in the end we decided it was benign. Right? How about some good news? And I think that should be enough to say submit, unless molecular testing would be performed. And I guess how would we know for sure that it was benign?
Yeah, I think you have to say no to the other two major categories on the screen in order to be able to submit. If the answer is no, if the answer is yes, you have to say yes. You have to answer yes or no.
So Dr. Drew, what would be typical in a case like this? Would you follow up then with molecular testing on this biopsy if you did a cytology specimen with a needle biopsy?
So I looked at this recently. There's time lags between data entry on this form.
Yes.
So at the time of a biopsy, I'll say that when the procedure is done, what you have there can be filled out pretty quickly as far as what was submitted.
I see.
Next, when you go down below to mediastinoscopy is a procedure that's fading into history in the VA. They do a different type of procedure that achieves the same goal. So that is called EBUS, for endobronchial ultrasound. So it's either or. You can have the same exact fields here. So this is a different procedure that would might take us on the same date, maybe the different date. And then yes, the site is correct. And then what's kind of not logical, the next after mediastinoscopy is you would actually get the histology back first. And then after histology, you may or may not get molecular testing.
Okay, depending on what it shows.
Yeah, so adenocarcinoma is best practice. You have to get all those other molecular testings. And then there's another thing that the VA does that we at some point have to integrate into here, which is the VA has a national precision oncology program where a multi-gene panel test is run. And I think it's important that this dashboard shows that. So it wouldn't be other, it should be a structure because it's a national program. That way users can know to look there if they're looking for a unique mutation.
That makes sense. So it sounds like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're going through all the forms right now and revising them for different issues. So just stay tuned. It's hard to say exactly. I mean, Drew just gave one example, but there'll be others, I'm sure, even on this form. So, Drew, we're going to be sitting down and walking through all this with lots of experts. So, it's going to be there's going to be a
and make sure that everyone signs off. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Good. Okay. Well, it sounds like it would be typical then from what you're saying, for there to be a lag in the procedure dates, like you were saying. So we would submit it as it is without the rest of it. We could say maybe not yet. We don't have molecular testing yet, and we don't have mediastinoscopy yet. And obviously, the sections that haven't been added yet, we can't check those. But we did do the biopsy on this date, and we could submit it the way it is, and come back to it later when the histology comes back, and maybe it directs us to do molecular testing or something else, and we could fill that in then. That might be a typical workflow. And there's our fields.
It doesn't have a place for it. Where it's going to go, we can, it hasn't been finalized yet.
Yeah, exactly. But as you can see, it's got the coded field values that we filled in, and now that's all back on the server side in Avicenna, stored in the graph store.
Now, of course, this screen is going to be gone, after we're done debugging everything. But for those who, so go back to that screen. And for those who are not familiar with, haven't seen this before, this screen is set up. You'll notice the URL is not PALS. It's got a different URL. And if you were to actually put your cursor on the URL and press enter, you would. This is where you could actually look at the LCAP, the original LCAP biopsy form with the same data that you just entered. So in other words, same patient, same data. So this is right now on the system we're supporting both the classic LCAP forms and also the new VA-PAL forms. And they don't mix at all. You can't get from one to the other, except for on this one debugging page where you see where you press submit on a form or you press save on a form, and it's a debugging form that shows you what the values are that are being captured, that have been captured, into the record. And then you can, that's where the one place where we designed a crossover, and you just press enter on the URL, and the LCAP form, the corresponding LCAP form is brought up. So then you can see, this is a way to confirm that the field names are all the same and the values are being saved. That compatibility we just talked about is being upheld. So that's why that feature is there. And so
it's testing the compatibility, whether we're sticking to the standard on the code names for the fields. It's also testing whether we're properly saving the data into the graph store and then reprocessing when we able to put it into a new form and insert it properly. Exactly. So it's actually exercising a lot of the code to be able to do this.
It does, and it's there for convenience for testing, and so I wanted to, I mean, it's not, it's never going to be documented in the user manual or anything. But it is part of the design right now, the design of the system. And when we take out that intermediate debugging page, that capability will be gone. But I mean, right now we've left it in, because while we're developing and testing the forms.
Exactly. So that's the biopsy form, and. If I refresh here, I guess, Now let's pick that guy again. Yep, there he is. Biopsy form is now here, listed on the set, and if we go into it, here's our data, just as we.
And it was not marked incomplete. You'll notice.
That's right. That's right. These CT evals are incomplete. The background's incomplete, but the biopsy's complete. We filled in enough fields.
Right.
It's legit.
Right. The way to complete a form is to press submit, and to get past the edits that allow you to submit.
That's right. So questions, comments, or concerns about the biopsy form? All right. Well, then this is what we prepared for our demonstration today. I guess we can stop here and say any questions, comments, or concerns about the project generally before we wrap up today's call. Well, as you can see, the patient lookup is in significant flux right now as it's improving day by day. So join us next week when I think that homepage is going to look significantly different than it does now.
The link that was sent out in the message didn't seem to work. They finally had to send us this one. So the message that came out yesterday, I know myself and Sam both at least had problems with that.
I'm sorry. It was because it was my fault, Joel. I didn't do it right. Linda wasn't here, and I had to get the session started, and so I did it wrong.
Well,
when Linda isn't here,
it won't happen again. Won't happen again.
When Linda isn't here, things fall apart.
That's
really,
true.
we're lucky nothing's on fire.
As far as you know.
So yeah, it should be the same next week, assuming that I don't have another emergency come up. So, and it wasn't a serious emergency, just so you know.
All's well.
No worries.
So thanks for joining us, everybody.
Have a great day.
Have a great week.